Sabbath rest to all of you, and Sabbath peace. I'm always glad to see those of you who continue to come to congregation on Shabbat. As usual, the Most High has been gracious unto us, and He has been kind, benevolent, while the rest of the world is dealing with the issues of politics and what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. The Most High continues to protect His people and cover us from this pandemic that is so vibrant in our society. I'm glad to be back with you again this week. I had a wonderful time in Palm Springs last week with the congregation there. They send their love to you all here, and it's great to be home. It's good to go. It's good to come back home. I have a long way to go today, and I don't want to keep you long doing it, so I'm going to jump into it. Mitzvahs, my mitzvos. We can study all we want about the scriptures. We can study those. But if we don't understand the governance of the kingdom of the Most High, that's a problem. You cannot become a part of a country or nation of people without knowing and understanding the governance that governs it. We are not a democracy. We are a theocracy. We are a theocracy. We have a king. We have a spiritual king, being the Most High, and we have a physical king in King David. The kingdom of the Most High is very important, and the governance that He has given to the nation of Israel is very important to them. The things that I have been teaching over the course of this time in relationship to the mitzvahs, I want to be clear, and I want it to be clear in your mind. These mitzvahs are not written to the nations. They are written to Israel. The Most High said that the nations are but a drop in the bucket to Him. Now go figure out what a drop in the bucket looks like. So He's telling you that the rest of you all don't mean that much to me. But Israel, He says, Israel I loved, and my eyes are always up on Hebrew Israel. Not national Israel, but Hebrew Israel. Not Ashkenazi, Sephardic Israel, but Hebrew Israel, which happens to be in exile. We can learn all the Hebrew, we can learn all the Shorshims, we can learn all of that, but if we don't understand the governance that governs the nation of Israel, then we are in bad shape. You cannot go to a nation that you were not born in and bring the governance from where you came into that nation and try to live by it. That's not going to work. So these mitzvahs, the mitzvahs, our commandments are very important to, once again, Hebrew Israel. And the fact that I've thought about the Hebrew statement that Kohen Sean Appleton has brought to our attention, that the commandments were weak and inefficient and did not bring us to the goal. And number one, the statement is very arrogant. The statement is one that says that the Most High has spoken something that is weak, ineffective, and not useful. But the people that said that don't know what the goal is. They don't know what the goal is. They don't understand. The Greeks and the Romans cannot know what the mind of the Most High is if they are enemies of His and don't like Him or His people. The Torah and the Mitzvahs that the Most High have given us are for national Hebrew Israel to live by, and the goal, get this now, the goal will be exacted when we get into the Messianic era. That's the goal. And that's when that's when these mitzvahs are all going to come into play. Israel will have a governance, will have a king, will have a temple, will have Cornea, will have Levites, will have everything that makes a nation a nation. And we will live like that with the Spirit of the Most High, not a man. Not a man. Not a man. I gotta say it. 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 Jesus Christ is not going to be there. And if He is, He's going to be there just like me and you. And He's not going to be healing no lepers. And He's not going to make no blind and no lame walk. He's going to be there just like you and I. So let's get to it today. There's 40 of them. This might not take me as long as I think it might, but we're going to get to them anyway. Mitzvahs from Vayikra. These mitzvahs come out of the portion, the Hebrew study of Bahar on the mountain. So the Most High is going to give us some instructions. You have to realize that the Most High gives us enactments, ordinances, and precepts. And some of the things that He gives us and speaks to us about, as we're going to see on the mountain, are going to be related to the Kohanim, and some of them are going to be related to us. So let's get after it. We start with mitzvah number 243 in Vayikra, chapter 21, verses 1 through 3, and it's the prohibition for the Kohanim to become unclean. Goodness gracious. Must have been asleep when I wrote that. Oh, from, I left off the F, from a corpse or from their relative. So let's read it. This has to do with the Kohanim being clean and holy and not being contaminated by that which is dead. Yahweh said to Moshe, "Speak to the Kohanim and sons of Aaron, tell them, no Kohen is to make himself unclean for any of his people who dies, except for his close relatives, his mother, father, son, daughter, or brother. He may also make himself unclean for his virgin sister who has never married and is therefore dependent upon him." One of the things that's relative to the underlying purpose of this particular mitzvah is that the Kohanim represents and holds up the whole nation of Israel, and he cannot be contaminated with anything that's going to make him unclean, because he also has to make atonement for the people, which goes to speak to the idea that if we read and study Torah, we find that the Most High has a lot to say about death. And the fact that he says, the things that he says about death are things that are attributed to the fact that we that are Kohanim and people of the Most High need to refrain from things that are dead. And that's because the life is no longer in the substance that has died. And there is another aspect of this particular mitzvah that they say, and that is, once that the spirit of a man has gone out of the man, there relies within him that which is the evil inclination, which he returns back to, which is dust, and that the Kohanim and the people of Israel cannot be contaminated with that, if that makes any sense. (244) The prohibition for the Kohanim to make bald spots in their head, or mar the edges of their beard, or cut gashes in their flesh. And these are enactments that are directed to the Kohanim. Kohanim are not to make bald spots on the head, mar the edge of the beard, gash the flesh. Rather, they are to be holy before Yahweh, and not profane the name of their Elohim, for they are the ones who present Yahweh with offerings made by fire, the bread of their Elohim. Therefore, they must be holy. Now, this whole aspect here of marring of bald spots and marring the head also are attributed to the idea of that which is dead, because it's a custom that was related to the nations and those who were not Yahweh's people. They would mar their heads and bald their spots in honor of, or in respect of, those that were dead. So the Most High is telling us, you're not supposed to do that. This is a mitzvah that's directed to the Kohanim. Underlying purpose of this mitzvah is that Kohanim is the agent between the people and Yahweh, and the Kohanim must be meticulously clean of body. Mitzvah number 245, the prohibition for the Kohanim to marry a prostitute. A Kohanim is not to marry a woman who is a prostitute. That should be pretty much understood in relation to that. One of the problems with that particular underlying purpose is that prostitutes sleep with a lot of men, and the idea of the issue with women, particularly as we know today, is that the act of sexual relationships with different men bring into existence different a multiplicity of different spirits, and the Most High doesn't want his Kohanim contaminated by that source. Mitzvah number 246, prohibition to marry a divorced woman who has been profaned or who has been divorced, because he is holy. So now, why doesn't he want a Kohanim to marry a divorced woman? He doesn't want that to happen because the woman has already been influenced by her divorced husband, and there's a relationship that's within that particular environment that the Most High does not want transmitted to the Kohanim. 247, the obligation to sanctify the Kohanim. A Kohanim is not to marry a woman who is a prostitute, who has been profaned, or who has been divorced, because he is holy for Yahweh. You are to set him apart as holy because he offers the bread of Yahweh, and he is to be holy for you because I, Yahweh, who makes you holy, am holy. So he's giving us instructions about the style and lifestyle of the Kohanim. 248, Vayikra chapter 21, verse 10 through 11, the prohibition for the Kohanim Godot to enter the house containing a corpse and make himself unclean. Once again, we're dealing with the aspect of the Kohanim and death. The Kohanim who is ranked highest among his brothers, the one on whose head the anointing oil is poured, on who is consecrated to put on the garments, is not to stop grooming his hair, tear his clothes, go into where any dead body is, or make himself unclean, even when his father or mother dies. So now we have the other one, which was the Kohanim. This is the Godot. This is the high priest, the one who offers the offering every year before the Most High for the whole nation of Israel. 249, Vayikra chapter 21, verse 13, the obligation of the Kohen to marry a virgin. He is to marry a virgin. He may not marry a widow, divorced, profane woman, or prostitute, but he must marry a virgin from among his own people and not disqualify his descendants among his people, because I am Yahweh who makes him holy. So now he's given instructions as to who the Kohanim can marry. He needs to marry a virgin, one who has never been with a man. Vayikra chapter 250, Vayikra 21:17, the prohibition for a Blemish Kohanim to serve in the temple. Yahweh said to Moshe, tell Aaron, none of his descendants who has a defect may approach to offer the bread of Elohim, of Yah. So if you have a Kohanim and one of his sons has a physical defect, then he cannot serve in the temple or in the sacrifices that are offered to the Most High. 251, the Vayikra. Oh, I didn't put the text up there. It's in chapter 21, verse 21. The prohibition for a Blemish Kohanim to enter the temple or sanctuary. No descendants of Aaron the Kohen has such defect may approach to present the offerings for Yahweh made by fire. He has a defect that is not to approach to offer the bread of his Yah. He may eat the bread of Elohim, both the special holy and the holy, only he is not to go into the curtain or approach the altar, because he has a defect, so that he will not profane my holy places, because I am Yahweh who makes them holy. These mitzvahs so far are directed towards the Kohanim. 252, Vayikra 22, 2 and 3, the obligation for the Kohanim to separate themselves from the holy things. Yahweh said to Moshe, tell Aaron and his sons to separate themselves from the holy things of the people of Israel, which they set apart as holy for me, so that they will not profane my holy name. I am Yahweh. Tell them, any descendant of yours through all your generation who approaches the holy things that the people of Israel consecrate to Yahweh and is unclean will be cut off from before me. I am Yahweh. So the idea here is that the people bring holy things for the Most High, and when they do that, the Kohanim are not they're to set it apart as holy for the Most High. And mind you, that the things that are brought by the people are these various sacrifices that they bring in offering to the Most High. 253, the prohibition for the Kohanim with Zarat to eat the holy things. Any descendant of Aaron with Zarat or a discharge is not to eat the holy things until he is clean. The procedure that when offerings are brought to the Kohanim, as when we study the aspect of Eli, they bring meat offerings, and these meat offerings are gathered, and one of the processes that allow an individual to recognize that their sins have been atoned for or forgiven by the Kohanim is that what they bring is something also that they share and eat with the Kohanim. And in this particular case, he's saying to us that anyone with a discharge or a zara'at cannot participate in eating those holy things until he is clean. 254, Vayikra 22 and 4, the prohibition for a person who is unclean to eat the holy things. Now, it's not just the Kohanim, but anyone who has touched a person made unclean by a dead body, or who has had a seminal emission, or who has touched a reptile or insect that can make him unclean, or a man who is unclean for any reason and can transmit to him his uncleanness. The person who touches any of these things will be unclean until evening, and is not to eat the holy things unless he bathes his body in water. After sunset he will be clean, and afterwards he may eat the holy things because they are food. They are his food. Understand a basic principle here. These mitzvahs that the Most High are giving us are mitzvahs that we are going to have to understand and know when we get into the land, because a lot of these are going to be directed to that particular idea. It's kind of like driving a car. You and I cannot participate in driving an automobile unless we know the rules that govern the road. We're not going to be able to live in the land effectively with the Most High unless we understand the rules that govern the nation. We live in a nation, in this America. This America has rules, laws, and governances. In order to live here, we have to abide by and know what they are. Now, we don't know what all the rules are, but we know the ones that are systemic to us to allow us to have a healthy relationship in the place where we are living. That's the way it's going to be in the land, which is one of the reasons why the text says, let us go up to Jerusalem, for the Torah of the Most High is going to be taught there. We're going to have a clear understanding of these governance so that we will be able to live effectively in the land. So as we read through them, we'll see that some of them are not going to apply to us in this exile. The prohibition for any non-Kohen to eat anything holy. No one who is not a Kohen may eat anything holy, nor may a tenant or an employee of a Kohanim eat anything holy. This thing here called tenant or employee is in relationship to an individual who is uncircumcised. It may not be a Hebrew, maybe a servant, maybe from the nations that's working for the Hebrew people. They may not engage in anything that's holy. 256, Vayikra 22 and 12. The prohibition for the daughter of a Kohanim who marries a man who is not a Kohanim to eat holy things. If the daughter of a Kohanim is married to a man who is not a Kohanim, she is not to have a share of the food set aside from the holy things. So once again, this lets us know that the family of the Kohanim, if they're part of his family and they're right and clean, then they can participate in the eating of the holy things. Remember, one of the things that Eli's sons fell victim to is that they were participating in the holy things and taking the best out, and and the people didn't like it, and things happened to them in the end result. 257, the prohibition for the Kohanim to profane the holy things. They are not to profane the holy things of the people of Israel that they have set apart for Yahweh, and thus cause them to bear guilt, requiring a guilt offering by eating their holy things, because I am Yahweh who makes them holy. This is directed to the Kohanim and the people who are bringing the gifts or the offerings for these situations that Torah requires. This is something that will also be a part of what will take place when we are in the land. Can I read without these glasses? I think I can. little blurry, but I think I can. Got down and got down to Palm Springs this weekend, and I was trying to be cute. And I took my wire glasses that I wear sometimes. They were fine. And Friday night, when I got through, the arm broke on them, so I did not have any glasses. I had to go find me some reading glasses. I don't know if you saw me on stream trying to read with those one-arm glasses. 258, Vayikra 22 and 18, the prohibition to consecrate a blemished animal as offerings. When anyone, whether a member of the house of Israel or a foreigner living in Israel, brings his offering, either in connection with a vow or as a voluntary offering, and brings it to Yahweh as a burnt offering, in order for you to be accepted, you must bring a male without defect from the cattle, the sheep, or the goats. You may not bring anything with a defect because it will not be accepted from you. So there is the aspect of what we're supposed to bring. It has to be something that's perfect. 259, Vayikra 22:21, the obligation to bring an unblemished peace offering. Whoever brings a sacrifice of peace offerings to Yahweh in fulfillment of a vow or as a voluntary offering, whether it come from the herd or from the flock, it must be unblemished and without defect in order to be accepted. These are the kind of things that will happen when we are in the land and bringing offerings and sacrifices. Some of you might think, well, I'm not a farmer. Hey, I got news for you. We may be we're probably going to be farmers in the land. And you're probably going to get acquainted with it really, really quick. I just can't imagine myself at this point in life being a herdsman. It just doesn't resonate in my mind. But the Most High has a way of changing things. Hopefully I'll have somebody doing that for me. 260. Vayikra 22 and 26, the obligation that an offering be at least 8 days old. Yahweh said to Moshe, when a bull, sheep, or goat is born, it is to stay with its mother for 7 days, but on the 8th day on, it may be accepted as an offering made by fire to Yahweh. So we see here that all of these mitzvahs so far are dealing with the Kohanim, are dealing with animals and so forth and so on. Mitzvah 261, Vayikra 22 and 28, the prohibition to slaughter an animal and its offspring on the same day. However, no animal is to be slaughtered together with its young on the same day, neither cow nor an ewe. So those of you that probably may be watching or watching this or following this, you say, well, that doesn't apply to me now. No, it doesn't apply to you now, but it's still in effect because none of the Father's mitzvahs have been done away with. And when we arrive in the land, in the Messianic era, these mitzvahs are all going to be in play. And once again, who are they for? They are for Hebrew Israel and those who join with Israel. 262, Vayikra 22:32, the obligation not to profane Yahweh's name. You are not to profane my holy name. On the contrary, I am to be regarded as holy among the people of Israel. Now, I am going to tell you something here, and I want to borrow from the Hebrew writer. When the Hebrew writer says that the mitzvot and the commandments that the Most High gave Israel were weak and ineffective, they just profaned his name. Now, some of you online are probably going to get upset when I say, God damn it. But that doesn't profane his name. Because, number one, God is not his name. Now, you might think it's a little vulgar, but I just need to put it in perspective for you that profaning the Most High's name has to do with activity in which that we act a way that doesn't shed light on his holiness and our holiness. Therefore, he spoke to Israel and he told Israel, you have profaned my name amongst the nations by being idolatrous and doing things that violate my mitzvahs. So here he's telling us, you are not to do those kind of things. On the contrary, because he is to be regarded as holy. So if the Most High said something, what he said is to be regarded as holy. And no one can take that away and make it anything different. When you do, you profane the Most High's name. Excuse me. 263, the obligation to keep the Shabbat. Work is to be done on 6 days. Let's follow the line. We know this. But the seventh day is a Shabbat of complete rest, a holy convocation. You are not to do any kind of ordinary work or any kind of work. It is a Sabbath for Yahweh, even in your homes. I want to stop right there for a minute. So now, you tell me that across the street, you have been saved from sin. He took my sins away. The best application that could possibly happen to you across the street is that if anything changed about you at all, you just simply became a better moral person. The bad news is you're still a sinner. Because this mitzvah right here, if you don't do this, you're missing the mark. Nobody told you what the mark is. I'm going to tell you. Because your pastor, matter of fact, why don't those of you that might be making this transition or that might be listening from a Christian perspective, ask your spiritual leader what it means to miss the mark. Ask him to explain what missing the mark is. The mark, from a Hebraic perspective, is an application to adhere to the commandments, the mitzvahs that the Most High has given us that we can participate in while we're in this exile. This one right here is a very critical one, and failure to do it carries the death penalty. All you got to do is go back to Exodus chapter 31, verse 12, read 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, and he'll tell you that anyone who treats my Sabbath as common and unimportant shall be put to death. So, now, the next question is, well, I don't keep the Sabbath and I'm not dead. Well, he's not talking to you about spiritual death either. He's talking about dead. Dead. So now the question is, well, why am I not dead? Well, you keep telling me that Jesus Christ brought grace and truth. But the whole idea is, the reason why you and I are still breathing, and I didn't start honoring the Sabbath until 2007, so I should have been dead a long time ago. And the only reason why I'm not is because of grace and mercy. Jesus Christ has nothing to do with grace and mercy. What the Most High understood and knew in his compassionate self is that when he put us in exile, he knew that the places he was putting us, there are things that we were going to lose. We'll lose our king, we're going to lose our temple, we're going to lose our Cornea, and we're also going to lose the benefit of our Torah understanding. But that didn't mean that he done away with this. So he gave us grace and mercy in this exile to preserve us from the death penalty that we would have deserved. That's what grace and mercy is about. When we get back in the land in the Messianic era, all these are going to be in play, and anybody who doesn't honor the Sabbath and continues to do so, you will be gone. And I want to explain something to you. I think I talked about this the last time. He said in some of his mitzvahs that you will be cut off from your people. The one thing that the Most High has is compassion for what he has created. And he says, I don't find any pleasure in the destruction of the wicked. So, in the Most High's mind, he's going to preserve those that are going to continue to follow his ways and live according to his dictates in the eighth and final day. Everybody who doesn't make the eighth and final day, I got news for you. This might be wonderful. This might be wonderful for you. I'm going to preserve you from continuous horror, according to Torah. You're not going to go to hell and burn in the lake of fire forever and ever and be tormented. The Most High says, I don't find any pleasure in that. The merciful aspect of the Most High is that he's simply going to cause you to simply not exist. Don't exist. One of the aspects that we don't realize and understand about the mercy of the Most High, when we think about the deluge, and we think about the multitude of people who were succumbed to the flood, it's the fact that the Most High used the same principle of poof, you don't exist. In other words, while it was that the flood took their life away, the Most High preserved them from the devastation of the flood by taking their life first. Isn't that awesome? That's called what? That's called mercy. He doesn't find any pleasure in the destruction of the wicked. He doesn't find any pleasure by watching what he has created squirm and wiggle and fight for air and fight for breath and fight to live when they're being destroyed. That's not who he is. So you might say, well, fine, I can live the life that I'm living, I just won't exist. Okay. That's your choice. But for everybody who's struggling for eternal life, these laws, these mitzvahs, these rules, this governance is important to your existence so that you are defined within the Most High as being somewhat righteous enough not to be considered wicked, because wicked's not going anywhere. Wicked's not even going to make the land. Wicked's not even going to make revivification from the dust. You just, poof, you just don't exist. All right, keeping the Sabbath is important. Mitzvahs 264. Vayikra 23, 4 through 7, the obligation to rest on the first day of Pesach, which is Passover. These are the designated times of Yahweh, the holy convocations you are to proclaim at their designated times. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, between sundown and complete darkness, comes Pesach, to Yahweh. On the first day, you are to have a holy convocation. Do not do any kind of ordinary work. So in the spring, when the Christian church is having Easter or Resurrection Sunday, the Hebrew people are celebrating the Feast of Passover, Pesach, in which that we remember our exodus, our ancestors' exodus out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of Egypt. Here's an interesting thing. Right now, even in this exile and in the places that Israel has been dispersed, we are in a Egypt kind of environment. Egypt for Israel was what's the word I'm trying to find? It was a consortium, or it was a gathering in the nation of Egypt of a multiplicity of gods. And they were subjected to all of these gods. They were subjected to hard labor. They were subjected to a leadership that said, we don't know your God. So in this exile that we're in, across the globe that Israel is dispersed, many of the governments and many of the people who are governing the land do not know Yahweh. Pharaoh said, I don't know your God. I don't want to know your God. Now, with that being said, the leaders have a semblance of knowing someone who is an all-creator. Okay? But the problem being is they don't know the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. They don't know him. They don't know him. And I got some news for you. Bad news. Most of your spiritual leaders don't know the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, because if they did, if they knew him, they would fear him, and they would walk circumspectly before him, and they would honor the words that he has spoken, and not the words that somebody else that's not him has spoken, who wants to be him. So now we're getting into the mitzvot that govern something that we call the Feast of Yahweh. Yahweh has certain feasts that he has prescribed to the nation of Israel, in which that he calls a holy convocation. The Most High's holy convocation doesn't convene in August, and it doesn't convene in July. I know you know what I'm talking about. By mitzvot number 265, Vayikra 23 and 6, the obligation to eat matzah for 7 days and have a holy convocation. Do not do any ordinary work. So on the 15th day of the same month, which is Nisan, is the festival of matzah. For 7 days you are to eat matzah. On the first day you are to have a holy convocation. Do not do any kind of ordinary work. Bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh for 7 days. And on the 7th day is a holy convocation. Do not do any kind of work. So now, 14th day is Pesach. The 15th day we begin the Feast of Matzah. The 16th day we begin counting the Omer. And from the 15th day for 7 days, this particular mitzvah is in play. We eat bread or things that don't have any leaven in it. 266, the obligation in Vayikra 23 and 8 to bring an offering and refrain from ordinary work. Bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh for 7 days. On the seventh day is a holy day, convocation. Do not do any kind of ordinary work. So during this festival of Feast of Matzah, we are also supposed to bring an offering at the end of the Feast of Matzah. And if we were in the land, the one that's made by fire, an offering made by fire means that it would be an animal sacrifice that would be consumed upon the altar. 267, Vayikra 23, 10 through 12, the obligation to bring the Omer offering of barley on the second day of Pesach. This would be the 14th, this would be the 15th. Tell the people of Israel, after you enter the land, I'm giving you the harvest of its ripe crops. You are to bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the Kohanim. He is to wave the sheaf before Yahweh so that it will be accepted. The Kohanim is to wave it on the day after the Shabbat. On the day that we wave the sheep, you are to offer a male lamb without defect of his first year as a burnt offering to Yahweh. Once again, this will happen in the land when we have orchards and we have fields that produce the various kinds of things that the Most High want. This cannot be done while we are in exile. Mitzvah 268, the prohibition to eat bread until the 16th of Nisan. You are not, the prohibition, you are not to eat bread, dried grain, or fresh grain until the day you bring the offering for your Elohim. This is a permanent regulation throughout all your generations, no matter where you live. This is the 16th of Nisan, the day in which the Omer is brought. Okay, so once again, we're not eating things that are leavened. 269, Vayikra 23:15, the obligation to count the Omer. From the day after the day of rest, that is, from the day that you bring the sheaf of waving, you are to count 7 full weeks until the day after the 7th week, and you are to count 50 days, and then you are to present the new grain offering to Yahweh. This is talking about Shabbat. 270, the Vayikra 23:16 and 17, the obligation to bring bread of wheat from our homes on Shabbat. So we should be bringing bread of wheat when we come for our convocation. Until the day of the 7th week, you are to count 50 days, and you are to present a new grain offering to Yahweh. You must bring bread from your homes for waving, 2 loaves made with 1 gallon of fine flour baked with leaven, as first fruits for Yahweh. This is what we're supposed to do on Shabbat. 271, Vayikra 23 and 21, the obligation to rest and not do any ordinary work on the festival of Shabbat. On the same day, you are to call a holy convocation. Do not do any ordinary work. This is a permanent regulation throughout all your generations, no matter where you live. This is one that we participate in this exile. 272, Vayikra 23:24, the obligation to rest on the day of the Feast of Trumpets. Yahweh said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel, in the 7th month, the first of the month, is to be for you a day of complete rest, for remembering a holy convocation announced with blast on your shofar. So now we need to know when the Feast of Trumpets arises so that you can have a holiday. You know what's interesting? What's interesting is that, and I know that the government makes it mandatory, that when all of the government holidays come around, we take a day off. We're just happy to take a day off. But when the Most High's holidays run around, we be working. We don't put in for a vacation day that precludes us from having to work on the Father's days. I got some bad news for you. If we're in the land and that happens, you don't exist. So consider the fact that when you do this in this exile, it's grace and mercy that you and I are still breathing and exhaling. But these are very serious to the Most High, and He considers them as being very serious, and we should make every effort to abide by this. I think this one happens on around September the 6th or 7th this year. If you need us to remind you, we're going to have to put up a schedule, a calendar of when these events come into existence so that you can take the time off as the Most High requires us to do. Who is this for? Who is it for? Hebrew Israel. The nations can do whatever they want to do. Israel, Hebrew Israel, cannot. 273, Vayikra 23:24, the prohibition to perform any ordinary work on the Feast of Trumpets. Yahweh said to Moses, tell the people of Israel, in the 7th month is the first month. The first of the month is to be for you a day of complete rest, remembering a holy convocation announced by the blast of the shofar. This particular commandment is do not do any kind of ordinary work. One of the things that I'm finding as I'm going through these mitzvahs is that many of the writers, and once again I've indicated to you that some of the mitzvahs that we're looking at are not on any of the charts consistently. They might be on one, they might not be on another one. So the Kohanim that have put these 613 mitzvahs together are not consistent. Not only are they not consistent, but for example, this one right here, which happens to be in 24 and 25, you might read this as one whole mitzvah. They break chapter 23 or 24 out, then they separate this and read, and it becomes a separate altogether mitzvah. So the counting is kind of weird as they do it. And as you see here, you actually have 1, 2, 3 mitzvahs all in this one set. So the next one is broken out to show you that you're supposed to bring an offering for the Feast of Trumpets made by fire to Yahweh. That's a separate mitzvah. 274. 275. Vayikra 23:27, obligation to fast and bring an offering made by fire on the Day of Atonement. So all these offerings made by fire, you can see that we're going to have what? We'll have to have a lot of sheep. We'll have to have a lot of bulls. We're going to have a lot of goats because we're going to be making a lot of offerings. So we're going to be herdsmen, or I'm going to be borrowing some of your livestock. You know, we go next door. I gotta make an offering there. Can I borrow one of your lambs? You know, like going next door and borrowing a cup of sugar. You know, you better have your own. Yahweh said to Moshe, on the 10th day of the 7th month is Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement. You are to have a holy convocation. You are to deny yourself, and you're to bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. This is the Day of Atonement, also called Yom Kippur. Mitzvah number 276, Vayikra 23:28, the prohibition to do any ordinary work on the Day of Atonement. You are not to do any kind of work on the day because it is you're to make an atonement for you before Yahweh, your Elohim. We kind of got that one. 277, Vayikra 23 and 32, the obligation to rest on the Day of Atonement. Number one, if you're fasting, you're going to want to rest. Um, it will be a Shabbat of complete rest. You are to deny yourselves. You are to rest on your Shabbat from evening and then the ninth day of the month until the following evening. Now we're hearing a lot of words about these Shabbats and these days of rest that happen on these feast days. These Shabbats, they're called high Sabbatines. They're called high Sabbaths. They don't occur on the seventh day of the week. They can occur anytime within a week, but when they occur, they are considered to be a high Sabbath. Mitzvah number 278 and 279, the obligation to rest on the first day of Sukkot and do no ordinary work. Yahweh said to Moses, tell the people of Israel, on the 15th day of the seventh month is the feast of Sukkot, for 7 days to Yahweh. On the first day there is to be a holy convocation, and you're not to do any ordinary work. So the Most High gives us a lot of time off, doesn't he? We're around here, God, geez, I'm working. I can't wait for the next holiday. Most High is giving you holidays. He's giving you times off to rest, and He's giving you convocations. So not only is He giving you time off to rest, He's giving you time to celebrate and have a feast along with it. Maybe we should be barbecuing on these days. I guarantee that's what the Hebrew people were doing. It was barbecuing, and it wasn't pork. Lamb, and goat, and beef. Say what you say? Lamb. 280. Micah 23:36, obligation to bring an offering for 7 days. For 7 days you are to bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. So during the time of Sukkot, it's not just meeting and gathering and teaching, but it's also would be the requirement for us to bring an offering for those 7 days that we meet for the celebration of Sukkot. And one of the things that that we miss being in this exile is that Israel as a nation, it was a national gathering. They gathered as a nation of people, and they celebrated this particular event. It wasn't like they all stayed home. No, they pilgrimed up to Jerusalem. They built sukkahs, and you know what? You know the party over here, party over there. I can just see the Hebrew people just having a great time during this Sukkot time, just having a big blast of barbecue and having some good old spiritual holy wine, and having a great time. That's the reason why the Colossian writer said, "Don't judge us in our Sabbaths and eating and drinking." So they said, but it's true. That's what we do. That's what these convocations are all about, and also honoring the Most High. Mitzvah number 281 and 282, the obligation to rest and bring an offering made by fire, not do any ordinary work. On the 8th day, which is the final day of Sukkot, you are to have a holy convocation, bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh, and it is a day of public assembly. Do not do any kind of ordinary work. That's on the 8th day, the end of Sukkot. 282, Vayikra chapter 23, verse 40, the obligation to take branches in hand. This is also in relationship to Sukkot. On the day you are to take choice fruit palm fronds, thick branches, river willows, celebrate in the presence of Yahweh your Elohim for 7 days. This is at the beginning of Sukkot, rather. And you are to observe it as a feast of Yahweh 7 days in the year. It is a permanent regulation. Generation after generation, keep it in the 7th month. So, we need to get these fronds and and branches, and it's a celebration. And one of the things that we can see, I can visualize and see the Hebrew people in their celebration bringing the palm leaves and willows and waving them and just having one great glorious time on this particular feast day. Mitzvah 283, I think this is the last one. Vayikra 23:42, the obligation to dwell in a sukkah. You are to live in a sukkah for 7 days. Every citizen of Israel is to live in a sukkah so that generation after generation you will know that I made the people of Israel live in the sukkah when I brought them out of the land of Mitzrayim. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. So these are the 40 that are in the book of Vayikra and in the parashah that deals with Ba'ar. I think that I am through there. So that's 40 of them this week, and we're going to conclude our sharing of them. You can go back and look at them and read them and see what the Most High has to say, but we bring them to mind so that we can understand that we are supposed to live by these. Well, I can't do it. Well, don't worry about it. Don't worry about what you can do now. Worry about what you can do, and the rest of what you can't do, consider that grace and mercy has been attributed to you in this exile. But when we get in the land, and I'm looking for that day when we'll celebrate together, and we'll have this great big, we're going to have a party over here, party over there, barbecue over here, barbecue over there, and it's going to be one great eating time. So, once again, to our viewers, tune into our podcast by downloading Podbean, or you can go, if you have an Apple phone, you can go to iPod, look for Hebrews in Israel, Hebrews in Exile, and you can follow the podcast that we're providing. Each week we have a new update every Friday, so you can check into the update there. Well, I say to you, shalom. That's it for me today. Kind of short, kind of quick, but those are the mitzvahs. It's kind of like going to DMV and getting the manual, study the rules so that we can live safely with the Most High. I say to you, Rebecca, Yahweh v'yishmerka, Ya'er Yahweh panav aleka v'kanuka, Yasah Yahweh panav aleka, v'yasham laka shalom. May Yahweh bless you, and may Yahweh keep you. May Yahweh make his face to shine on you and show you his favor. May Yahweh lift up his face towards you and give you much peace as we continue to live in this exile. Until next time, I say to you, shalom.